vertical mode, you can put down just a little bit more water and then let it sit, and then let the guy come in with a speed roller and roll it down before you mow it, and it'll keep it, it irons it back down, and it keeps it from scalping so bad. If you've already vertical mowed, you've done your work with what you wanted to do as far as thinning the grass out. You don't want to come in here and create a bunch of scalp marks. So if you have to, you might want to come back and roll the green before you mow it. If you need to. You learn this by trial and error. We know that by looking at the grass, if it's pulled up too much, that we're going to have to roll it before we cut it. Now, we didn't do that on this green. We didn't have to do it on any green out here except this green right over here that we shot earlier, number 12. It's always gets plenty of sunlight. As you can see, the sunlight's on that green. You see the shades on this one. But that green always has good growing condition, and it's always been one of our thickest greens out here. We know from history that green's going to have thickness and puffy problems. And we usually even vertical mow it maybe one extra time a week sometimes, just to keep it in line with the other greens. One of the things you can do too is that when you're vertical mowing, the most aggressive pass you're going to make is going from front to back. And now he's going downhill. When you have a green that pitches in one direction like a lot of ours do, they go back from back to front. And so if you go, say, from 6 to 12 on the clock on your vertical mowing pattern, that's going to be your most aggressive pass. The least aggressive pass is going to be going cross grain, or from, say, 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock, going this way on this green would be the least aggressive pass. As you see, he's going in the more aggressive pass. But when you vertical mow, if you're pulling and puffing real bad and you've kind of gotten behind on it, you can go cross grain and it won't pull or puff near as bad. And sometimes what you can do is just go ahead and go cross grain for a couple of times until you catch up with the thickness, and it won't pull on you and scalp so bad. And then after you've gone cross grain for a couple of times, then you can turn around and go back down grain, and it won't have all the scalping issues. But if you ever get a little bit behind, sometimes you just got to go cross grain, and that helps a lot also. But during the day, if you don't have any moisture down, you really need to put moisture down in front of the vertical mower. Big help, tremendous help. Okay, one more time, I'm going to show you the lines that are in this. You see those lines and grooves? That's as deep, that's the look you're looking for. Some people ask you, how deep do you go? Well, it depends on how new your blades are. If your blades are old, about 65 thousandths, but if they're brand new, you're going to be going about 0 to get this look, because they just cut differently when they're new. It's all about the look. I mean, you can't just go off a number, because your blades are not worn the same as mine would be. So you need to kind of see it and understand it. It's just like an artist. I mean, they do things based on mixing their paints, their oil, the type brush they use. It's all from experience. And the only way to learn that is get out there and mess with it and do it. Some things you just can't cookbook. There is a lot of art in greenskeeping, a tremendous amount. Okay, here's a putt. He's still mowing, but we're going to putt where he's already mowed. Show you, this is, you know, right after vertical mowing with a single cut, we're going to show you the roll that you have on this ball. Of course, that's downhill, and these greens are not rolled today, and they were not, let me get back on my zoom here, and they were not rolled yesterday. They were rolled on the 4th of July and the 5th of July, and that was it. That's the first time we've rolled in quite a while. But you know, I like rolling. It gives the extra speed, but I don't roll too much because it is a form of stress. I don't care what anybody says about that. If you roll, you've got to stop and start, and that creates some issues, particularly on our greens, because we don't have a place to go off all these greens. We have to stop on our greens. Okay, I'm going to show you this putt. Now, this is right after you vertical mowed. Our members don't know what vertical mowing is. They have no idea when we vertical mow. They just come out here and play golf. They never complain about it. Never say, oh boy, you vertical mowed again, now it's going to be bad for 3 weeks. And if you vertical mow heavy, you're going to have 2 or 3 weeks in there. If you go real heavy on Ultra Dwarf, it's going to be at least a week and more that the putting quality is going to suffer. This way, that never suffers. And you just do it light frequently and you stay up with it. It's more of a light canopy control or density than it is trying to think about, well, I'm going to plow this thatch out of here. Well, that's just not the way it works. In fact, I think the guys that mow heavy have more thatch than the guys that do it light. And there's a lot of reasons for that, which we don't have time to discuss, but you just get in a bad vicious cycle. It's like aerification. You sit there and you vertical mow heavy, and same thing with core aerification. You know, you tell yourself, well, I'm not going to over fertilize, I'm not going to do all this crazy stuff, and you know, I'm going to kind of let it heal back in so I don't over fertilize this and get too thick coming out of aerification. Well, after you sit there and look at those holes for a week or two, almost everybody's going to fertilize. It's just human nature. The members start complaining about it, you're going to do it, and then all of a sudden the fertilizer, kicks in, and you're left with thicker greens than before when you started. It becomes a cycle. Vertical mowing, guys do it heavy, try to fertilize their way out of the bad results, and then they wind up in a month they got thicker greens than when they started, and they turn around and do it again, and they repeat a vicious cycle. And in that whole 30-month cycle, you've only got about a week or 6 days of good greens. When you do it this way, you have good greens every day. The only time we have noticeable impact on our green quality is when we're aerifying, and that is only a couple of weeks because we only aerify once a year. Anyway, it can be done. 36-year-old greens that I've been managing here, and the greens actually are over 100 years old. This green's never been rebuilt. It's over 100 years old. It has no internal modern drainage. And like I said, I've done this light frequent vertical mowing for 36 years. So I think if you would say that you have to heavy vertical mow or you're going to get a real big thatch layer, I think we've disproved that myth, because we don't have it here. We have one of the thinnest thatch layers of any of the greens I've ever seen for Ultra Dwarfs. I'm not saying we got the thinnest, but we got pretty thin, maybe 3/8 of an inch. And surely we would have had thick puppy greens by now after 36 years if you had to heavy vertical mow. Anyway, that's how we do it. It's going to be a pretty morning today. This is really a neat green. This green Donald Ross built back in 1910. Used to actually have a third front on it down here, that in this area right here, it got pulled in somewhere along the line before I got here. We're going to pull this back out and catch these little corners like right here. But this is really a neat green here. It's where we always have our little putting contest. Anyway, this is how we vertical mow, and it's pretty simple if you do it the right way.